Meanwhile, on Story Street, this is Alicia, and I have a special guest with us tonight, and I'm going to let her introduce herself, and she is going to tell you her story. There you go.
So anytime.
Anytime.
I'm Patricia Ruth Tyler. I was born in 1940. My parents were Lowell and Thelma Tyler. And by an unusual accident, I was born in Kentucky. The rest of my siblings were born in Indiana, so I'm the only Kentuckian. And they tell me that quite often. That my mother was at a funeral at the time and went into labor, so I was born in Seabury, Kentucky in 1940. And my life has been one of very, very conservative. My parents were very conservative, and I have continued to stay that way. But we've had a unusual life in a lot of ways. I went to Wadesville to school until my junior year in high school. Then I went to a big school in Evansville, which was quite different. My childhood was on the farm in Wadesville, Indiana, and I had 3 siblings at the time that I was mainly growing up, and we had very much fun on the farm. Everything was growing on the farm. We had cows, we had pigs, we had a big garden. We hung clothes on the clothesline. So we were, as I said, very conservative. My childhood was a wonderful childhood. My parents took us to church, to Sunday school. We grew up knowing God and believing in God that He could help us no matter what happened. And then in 1953, when I was 13, my mother had another child. So we had a daughter added to our family. So there were 5 of us. And so, as I said, we've had an exciting life. And in 1960, I went to Deaconess School of Nursing. I graduated in 61 and worked at Deaconess Hospital for 20-something years. My nursing was quite exciting at the hospital because I worked in intensive care. Never knew what was coming through the door, but we seemed to always be able to manage it. And then in 1963, I was sitting with my aunt at the Farmer's Daughter restaurant out on the southeast side of Evansville, and I met my future husband. He had been painting with a friend, doing house painting, and they were barefooted with jeans and a t-shirt, and they were covered in paint. But he asked me out, and I went, and that was it. We got married in 1963 and lived together for almost 60 years before he passed away. And our marriage life was wonderful. We had 2 children. Both of them were miracles. With Pam, I had some bleeding, and they said, you're going to have a miscarriage, and you may have already had one, and you probably are not pregnant. But 9 months later, she was born. And then 2 years later, we had a beautiful little daughter that was born, and she only lived for 3 days, and God took her home because she had some problems with her lungs and became critically ill and did not survive. That was a very hard time for both of us. That I can tell you that men and women both grieve, but they grieve in different ways. I was one that wanted to talk about it. I wanted to go to the cemetery. My husband was one that wanted to forget it and put it in the past and try to move on. And he probably had the best idea, but for me it was needing to talk about it, so I had to go and talk to my mother. She was always available for me, and I talked to God, and He got us through it. And then 2 years later, we had a beautiful son, and they had told me that I'd probably never get pregnant again, but we had Tim, and he's been a blessing, a great blessing to us. Both of my children are there for me whenever I need them, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But my nursing experience ended at Deaconess in 1984, and I went to work for a doctor, a pediatrician, out on the north side of Evansville. I worked for that pediatrician 26 years, and those 26 years were wonderful. We had a good group of nurses that got to work with, and my doctor was a wonderful Christian doctor, and he loved his patients, and his patients and his moms both really, really loved him. And I made so many friends. Today I'll meet them out on the street and they'll say, "Oh, Nurse Pat, I'm so glad to see you." And that just makes your heart really feel good when you meet them and know that you did help them when they were raising their children and their children were growing up. So I've had really not an exciting life, but a very good life. God's been so very, very good to me. And I've made some really great friends. Alicia is one of them. And Carolyn Mason was one of my moms, and we've stayed friends and even go to church together. So it shows that if you are there for your people, whatever work you do, you go to work and you do the best at whatever job that you're assigned to. And that's what I found with nursing. You answer their questions, you're there for them, you try to encourage them that this is going to be easy, this is going to pass, and things will be better tomorrow. And they usually are. Occasionally we lost a child, and that was always a hard thing. We had the cystic fibrosis kids from the clinic, and it was hard to see them suffer and then to lose them. That was one of the hardest things in my nursing, I think. But nursing was definitely my call. It was something that I really, truly loved, and I never gave it up. Even though I had a family, I always worked at least part-time so that I still had my nursing, because it was something that I truly loved. And I retired in 2010, and since then I've just gone out to eat with my friends and been there. We have a great time, and I try to be there for them, and they are there for me. And that's something that's so wonderful, and you never forget it. But one of the main things in my life that I would tell anyone, friends or family, but that if you will pick the right map and stay on the right road, God will always be there for you. And that would be one of the things that I would tell my friends, my family, and my church, that God is always there, and He's always there for us if we will truly believe in Him. And I would say to all of you, don't ever give up on your friends. If you have a disagreement with them, solve it. Don't go away angry. Always solve them. Sit down and talk it through. Always communicate with each other, and you will find that it'll work out much better than having anger or bitterness in your heart, because God doesn't want it, and all it does is make you feel bad and not the person that maybe you're bitter toward. So always remember, be forgiving and loving, and God will always bless you and give you a good life like I've had. And I hope you've enjoyed this talk. If there's anything I could ever do to help anyone, I'm always there to help. Thank you.
Do you mind me asking you a couple questions or something?
No.
What was your favorite thing about nursing? And when you worked at the hospital, what kind of nursing did you do?
Okay, in intensive care, I worked in surgical intensive care, so we had the patients that had surgery. We would get them from a recovery room, and back then, patients stayed a lot longer. In sometime intensive care, if they had a pretty serious surgery, they would stay 2 or 3 days, and so you got to know a lot of. In fact, there are some cases that I can still remember today that I had way back then. So it was something that I truly, truly enjoyed. Mm-hmm. Now, my pediatric experience, that was the love of my life. It was the best thing I ever did. I don't think we had one patient that I didn't try to love and understand. Some of them, when they got to be teenagers, they were different, but they were still our kids, we called them. We called them our kids, and we loved all of them. Didn't matter what kind of insurance they had. We never questioned. We never asked. They got good care. And that was really important to me. But the most exciting thing about my nursing is when I go out in public and a mom or one of those kids will run up to me and say, Nurse Pat, it's so good to see you.
Yeah. What about your travels? Tell us about your
Okay.
travels and your
Well,
family.
okay. Well, as when we were first married, we did a lot of traveling. We we've been married probably. Tim was 1 year old the first time we went to Disney World, and we went to Disney World probably just about every year after that until they were in high school. So we loved Disney World. That our trips out west were the best. 1 year we went through Galveston, Texas, and drove in the Badlands and the sand and white sands, and we just really had a great time. Another time we went to out to Grand Canyon, and we actually rode the mules down the Grand Canyon. That was always something that we got excited about, like to tell people about. So those trips out west were great. But Howard and I, even after the kids were gone and away from home and finished college, we never stopped going to the Smoky Mountains. That was one of our special places. We loved going there and going hiking, and we would hike the longest trails we could find. And he finally, after several years, convinced me that I could go up the chimney tops. So one day we actually walked. I got all the way to the top, but he wanted me to go around the rim of it. And I said, "Oh no, you got me to the top. That was enough." So we went back down. We did not go around the rim, but we did get to the top. So that was exciting. And of course, the main thing with our vacations is when we would go to San Augustine, Florida, spend time on the beach. We started out in the 70s taking our kids in the travel trailer. We went to stayed on the beach, and then when we got older, Howard and I we went. The first 2 years we stayed a month, and then we started staying 2 months, and then we extended it to 3 months. But since he passed away, I've backed it off to 1 month. But I still go a month every year to San Augustine, Florida, and that's once. So I love the beach. I love to hear the waves and watch the birds and all of it. I just love the beach.
Do you have any words of wisdom for women who have lost their husband?
Yes, my advice to anyone that's lost their companion, it's one of the worst griefs that you can have. But what you need to do is stay busy and don't give up your friends. Make sure you stay in touch with your friends. Go out to eat. I go to a Bible study, prayer. That's the thing that keeps you going.
Yeah. And what about your children? Do you have anything you would like to say to Pam?
To Pam, I would say, hang in there, and before it's over, you're going to get that big house you want.
And what about Tim?
And Tim's always there. It doesn't matter. He's working. He's just like his father. He never quits working. No matter what day it is, even on Sunday afternoon, you can see him out washing his car. So he's just a worker, and I don't think that'll ever change.
Do you have any words of encouragement for your sisterhood of nurses through the ones that had to go through the COVID epidemic and the ones that of your age? I know the tuberculosis was a hard time. I don't know if you had to deal with that.
Well, I went to Indianapolis to the Veterans Hospital in Indianapolis. It was a tuberculosis hospital at that time. That would have been in 1960. I was there for 6 weeks. We got special training, taken care, and you learned how to do the safety of not getting the disease yourself and using all the precautions. But working, it was fun because I got to work with the veterans too, and I got to know about them and listening to their stories, and it was very much. But the COVID, there's never been anything like the COVID.
Yeah.
It was a disaster, and I had a niece that's a nurse that had to work with all of the COVID patients, and she said the worst thing was when one of them would be so ill and they knew they weren't going to make it, but they would beg her to do something so they didn't die. And that's a really hard thing anytime in nursing. When you get a patient you know is not going to make it, you try to encourage them, but it's hard to encourage them. But and she had a hard time dealing with it herself, and that was the COVID thing that I would say was really a bad thing.
And is there anything else you would like to share with?
I think that's it.
That's
that
it.
I just that
Okay.
I enjoy my friends, and I'm enjoying life. Life's been good to me.
Good, good. Well, that is it for Pat's story, and I hope you've enjoyed this. I know I have. And one thing is these nurses that have been through this, keep them in your prayers, and remember, they've come through some really hard times, and encourage them and pray for them. And till next time, God bless you.
That was Shay on the phone. I better call her back.
Okay.
Okay, so is that it?
Yes, I believe so.